Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, folks. Worst bowl game ever.
Come out to the coast. We'll get together. Have a few laughs.
Somebody needs to fix this crap. Good grief. What a terrible bowl game. We kind of saw it coming. We've been talking about it all week. This Georgia FSU game was not going to be pretty, and it certainly wasn't. And really, it was so bad, even Kirby Smart had to speak to it because it was ridiculous. It was Georgia versus FSU second string, and that wasn't going to play out so well. So let's get into this story. We're also going to talk about Brew McCoy maybe coming back to Tennessee, which would be big for us. But let's get into this big story of Georgia and FSU, and let's listen to what Kirby Smart had to say about it.
People need to see what happened tonight, and they need to fix this. It needs to be fixed. It's very unfortunate that they, who has a good football team and a good football program, are in the position they're in. And everybody can say it's their fault and it's their own problem, all right? And everybody can say that we had our guys and they didn't have their guys. I can listen to all that. But college football has got to decide what they want. And I know things are changing, and I think things are going to change next year. And you know what? There's going to still be bowl games outside of those. People got to decide what they want and what they really want to get out of it, because it's really unfortunate for those kids on that sideline that had to play in that game that didn't have their full arsenal. And it affected the game 100%.
Yeah, Kirby sees it. Look, 63-3 is the worst beatdown in the history of any bowl game. What it boiled down to is FSU pretty much boycotted the game. Now, I don't mean they didn't show up. I mean their best players just said the heck with it. We got cheated. We were 13-0. We got kicked out of the playoff because our quarterback got hurt and we weren't in the SEC. Let's just call it what it is. And I favor the SEC too. That's my conference. But the reality is, had they been in the SEC and they lost their quarterback and been undefeated, they would have obviously gotten in. It's because of a lack of respect for the ACC and their quarterback got hurt. And Georgia not being in the college football playoff, they just proved to you how obvious it was that they should have been. But because three commissioners formed this stupid, moronic alliance, to block Greg Sankey. Greg Sankey wanted to go to a 12 team this year. It was supposed to happen this year. But those three commissioners, one of being that Phillips cat from the ACC, oh no, we can't let Greg Sankey and the SEC have what they want because we would have gotten too many teams in. That's true. We would have gotten at least 4 teams in because we would have had Alabama, Georgia, both of which should absolutely be in. Then you got Ole Miss and Missouri. Well, guess what? Ole Miss won their bowl game and Missouri won their bowl game. All 4 of those would have been in, and that's what those commissioners didn't want to happen. Even though it creaked them out of getting teams in, they didn't care. They had to keep the SEC out at all costs.
Sacrifices have to be made, mister.
And when you base things based on dumb feelings, you're going to get dumb results, which is what you got. So FSU felt incredibly cheated because they were cheated. And so all their best players opted out. Now, here's the thing about Florida State as opposed to Georgia. Georgia had a couple of opt-outs, but Florida State lost their whole defensive front, basically. Their top 2 wide receivers, their top 2 running backs, their top 2 quarterbacks. They were down to a third-string freshman who wanted to talk a little smack before the game. How'd that work out for you? I actually did a video on that. It's like the last thing you want to do is poke the bear. Georgia's not like you. They're not top-heavy. They have talent all throughout their classes because they've been the #1 recruiting class virtually every year for the last 5 years, or #2, whereas Florida State has not been. They got good in the transfer portal, so they're very top-heavy. They got some NFL talent and some very good players, but when they opted out, now you're in your second string. Well, their second string players are probably 20th as far as talent level, whereas Georgia's 1 or 2. So even had Georgia played their second string, they still would have won the game because they're not top-heavy. So Florida State had to have their top players in that game. And once they realized, hey, this is just a bowl game that doesn't really matter, why risk your NFL future? They opted out. Plus, they were ticked off. They were angry, they felt cheated, and they said the heck with it. And so you wind up with a game like this. And the thing about Georgia is they're not going to come into a bowl game and just kind of take it easy. That's not how they roll.
It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse.
That's right. You can't reason with a Kirby Smart ball club. When you play Georgia, you better bring it, and I mean bring it all. everything you got and then some. And you better not be talking smack about them on the front end and talking about the SEC. That's a mistake. Don't ever do that again, Brock Glenn. Just before a big game like that, they're a fine team. I'm looking forward to facing them. I think it'll be a heck of a ball game. That's fine. You can say all that. Don't talk smack talk about, well, we're 2-0 against the SEC and we're just as good and all. It's like, okay, not that made that much difference, but it just gave them a little bit of extra oomph. And the thing about Kirby Smart is he looks for any reason to be disrespected. Doesn't matter. So let's look at some of this opt-out stuff. And it appears Georgia loves to be on the top end of these absolute beatdowns. They beat TCU by 58 points last year, and of course Florida State by 60. It talks about how the Seminoles played without their top two of everything. Their starting tight end, 3 defensive linemen, their linebackers, all down the line. They had 29 scholarship players and all that were out. I'm surprised Norvell showed up. They could have been down to their third string coach. And I understand that Florida State beat Louisville to win their conference. You can be down a player or two and still win as long as everybody else shows up. But Georgia ain't Louisville. Okay. Let's just get that straight. And it's really, I kind of feel for some of these teams because they think football is a certain way until they play a Georgia or an Alabama. And then they realize, holy crap, they play a totally different game. And they do. We have to play them every year. So I know when we go up against them, we have to play our best game. Everything's got to work out for us to win, and we better be at home. That's how hard they are to beat. These other teams that, cruise through their conference and think, oh, well, how good can Georgia really be? There you go. TCU saw last year, and Florida State got a taste of it this year. I wish Florida State had their players. I think this would have been a very different game. I still think Georgia would have won, though. I would have given, let's say Florida State would have had all their players plus their starting quarterback. I would have given them, 25% chance of winning. Yesterday, I had them at about a 1 or 2% chance. I told you I thought Georgia was going to have a party. It was a bigger party than I thought. I was thinking like 35-7, something like that, 42-7, not 63. That's a bit much, especially with the clock rules the way they are. That you wouldn't expect there's enough time to score 63 points. But when the other team doesn't score hardly any, I guess there is time. So anyway, worst bowl game ever. It was just terrible.
No mercy.
But here's the thing for the Florida State fans, that wasn't your team. That was not the Florida State team that was out there all year. Besides not having your top 2 quarterbacks, it wasn't even close. And again, a top-heavy team. So enjoy the fact you were 13-0. That was whatever you want to call it, your second string versus Georgia's first string, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't take much out of it and just, next year it'll be fixed. We'll have a 12-team playoff, and this garbage will never happen again on this level.
It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
It may happen in some other bowl game that doesn't matter and it's outside the top 12, but nobody's going to have too legitimate a gripe other than there'll be some, but it'll be nothing like this year. And I don't think you'll ever see these commissioners ever pull a stunt like they did this year with their alliance. I don't know if you noticed, I don't have a lot of respect for that alliance. I don't care for it. Now let's talk about Brew McCoy for the Vols. He is a 5-star wide receiver. He has been a dog for us. Losing him this year, especially the way we did with that terrible ankle fracture, that was awful. And it was really hard to watch, but it looks like he's going to be coming back. Austin Price of VolQuest, who is really one of the top dogs when it comes to recruiting and whether or not somebody's going to enter the transfer portal or go NFL, he rarely speaks unless he's very confident, and he put out the term brutal news coming. So unless he's the worst speller in the world, I think we can count on Brew McCoy announcing he's coming back next year, because when you hear it from Austin Price, he's kind of like E.F. Hutton.
When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
That's right. When he talks, people listen. So I feel great about that. We've got a very exciting game coming up. Ever since it's been announced that Nico is going to be the starting quarterback, everybody's been going crazy in K-Town and Vol Nation. So we're fired up about tomorrow at 1 o'clock. It's a 1 o'clock game. I said noon the other day. Anyway, I know all of Vol Nation's fired up. I am too. I can't wait. It's going to be very exciting. And we're going to have most of our guys in the game. We've got a few guys that are opting out, but so is Iowa. Iowa's got more injuries, though, than opt-outs. I think most of them are going to play. So it should be a super fun game. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover all these big college football stories that I enjoy. Of course, the Vols are my team, but I like covering the big stories. If you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit this little button right here. It will cost you nothing, nothing, and it'll help me out. And right over here is the most recent video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.